Fall Structure is a game about falling down a structure. You can move in 3D, you can jump, and if you fall too fast, you'll eat shit. But if you fall just too fast enough, you can do some really cool stuff, and incidentally finish the main level in under 36 seconds. I'm the guy who figured out how to do that last part, and I spent 30 hours, and then a bunch more hours, grinding to make that reality. Wait, no, don't panic. You don't have to be like me. What I want is to break down the wall that people put between themselves and speedrunners, as if speedrunning is an accredited profession and not just a fun hobby that got way out of hand. There are no professional speedrunners, not really. The people who call themselves that are entertainers first, and the only person you need to worry about entertaining is yourself. I want you to enjoy playing Fall Structure within this arbitrary constraint of going fast, because I think it's a really cool way to play Fall Structure and other games. There's going to be 4 main sections to this video. First I'm going to talk through what I'm calling an easy version of the run. In reality it's more of a safe version. With these strats you'll die less and finish more runs. That's the key to improving in speedrunning. I'll say it again later, but it's a really important thing to internalise about this hobby. It's better to finish 10 runs than to go full pelt and die 1,000 times. The language I try to keep to is talking about risk rather than difficulty, because everything in this game is difficult if you're trying to do it perfectly. Seeing the whole route start to finish and learning to stay calm at the end are far more important than doing the first 20% perfectly. That's what the easy route offers, some big pace compromises in the name of consistency. Next we have the moderate route. That name will seem kind of absurd when you see the time of my example run, but it's a very clean example of the kind of strats that you can drop into the easy route slowly over time, gradually trading some safety for pace. We're going to have to introduce some high risk and low consistency strats in the name of not losing several seconds, but I'll take the time to explain the common pitfalls and commiserate with you about their difficulties. The idea of this is for you to start seeing some alternative options and think about the game more generally. If I do X then Y, so maybe I could try Z. Once you start having these ideas, the whole game opens up, and it's very possible you'll find your own ways to do some sections that I've never seen before. This is the best way to play Fall Structure. After the moderate route, I'm going to show you a few much more advanced strategies. Approaches we know to be fast, but aren't worth the additional risk unless you're trying to hit the top end of the leaderboard. The moderate route can get you within about a second of second place on speedrun.com right now. That's the sort of target I think you'll need before you start worrying about these things. Finally, I'll have a word about practice, specifically how to go about creating practice maps and the sort of things you'll need to think about while doing so. It's not quite as simple as just moving the player to location and starting from there, but you'll see that when we talk about it. And before I yap enough for you to completely lose interest, you should check out the official Discord. It's linked on the main menu in-game and has a small but very active community of players and mappers doing some really neat stuff. I highly encourage you to come along if you want to join in or ask questions. Anyway, the script ends now, it's all ad-lib from here on, so the YouTuber voice is going away. I hope you have fun and I hope you learn something. I'm just going to go through this at full speed once, give the general overview, and then I'll go back and show any intricacies that I want to discuss. Okay, so we're just going to hold forward here, catch this edge on the right, and bounce to the left. You want to hold back a little here to go safe. Out, face bump there is fine. You want to hold forward here and clip this in the face. Catch a soft bounce here, and hold forward from about here. Get a nice clip on the right. Bounce. Bounce again, don't worry about it going too fast. Jump clean and just line up your landing here. You're going to jump here, get a nice safe landing on top, bounce, bounce, fall off the side, bounce. This is a little tricky, I got it really clean here. You don't need to. Hit that face, hold the edge here, bounce here. You're going to veer to the right, drop down to this, face plant this, catch this third one, bounce down to the bottom one, catch the edge here, on the left, catch the very high bit there, and catch the bottom. And it's a run. It's not that complicated. But there are some intricacies to go through. So right at the start here, I mentioned that you hold back a little here. If you try and go full force, you'll hit really high up on the face. You don't really want this. You don't want to hit too high up in the face here. You want to hit a bit lower down so that you don't have to fall as far. It's just a bit safer. When you land here, you don't have to really worry about any particular landing. A bounce and just fall off the edge is fine. I like to connect with this edge here just because for me I find it more consistent more than faster. Okay, so you're going to bounce down here. All that really matters is that you hit this triangle and ideally with some forward motion to it. That's all that really matters, and you will almost always connect quite firmly with this flat face here. You might catch the edge at the bottom, that's fine. So as you're dropping here, you'll note that I clip to the left here. This is like one of the only intricacies of this run. is you're falling too far here to safely land on this platform. So you need to do something to slow your fall. Clipping this wall on the side here, just giving it a bash, hold left, is enough to soften it. You land down here. This has a sort of slanting edge that slopes away from you. You can clip this, but it's not really that important for a run of this sort of level. All you really need to do is land on this and be ready to move forward. Now, as we come down here, you'll note that I went off to the right here. I don't necessarily think that's the best shout. Ideally, you want to land a little bit further forward and go off of the front edge. The main reason for that is that there's two. One is that this surface down here is going to carry you to the left a little bit, so you want to be a bit further to the left so you can lean to the right. If you're coming down here when you land, you're kind of having to go left and then forward here. And see, I'm barely to the left of this line, which is where you need to be to survive it. But otherwise, just do what's comfortable, practice things, see what you like. Again, the goal here is not to have the fastest possible run. The goal here is to have a run that you survive, that you get successful, get run completions on, and then you can start to work on speeding up individual parts of it. So just do whatever you can do to survive here. There's nothing fancy about this. The only thing about this landing here is you want to be holding some amount of forward momentum. Like, you're pushing towards this area over here. You really want to try and maximize your speed over there. That doesn't necessarily mean you want to land like up here, because you can't really see from this angle, but from here you kind of can. It's leaning the slopes towards the player here rather than towards the target. So if you try and land on this, you'll very often kind of get quite a stubborn slow bounce that'll sort of take you back up. Landing down here, you still get taken in that sort of direction, but you're not trying to go in this straight line here. You're actually kind of going over around the cliff. That's what allows this to be relatively quick. You bounce here, bounce on this. That's quite a low bounce. I won't go into the intricacies of that now, but holding forward as you get to that bounce is part of why it's so low. When we land here, we're going to make a little bit use of the coyote time. That's the effect where you bounce and you leave the ground, but you still have, it's 0.3 of a second to jump after leaving the ground again. You still get to jump. That just gives you a bit more control over this jump. It's not super important, just good to know that you have it here, because you've got quite a tight line you're trying to take here. It's not super important, just make sure you land in the pipe. So you jump, you land here, and you're going to just get a nice jump. You just want to clear. One thing that you want to be careful of is this roof here. You don't want to hit that, that's all. If you jump after this, if you jump just as you're coming up to this chevron here in the ground, that's good enough. You can try and do this in one fall, but I found it's just when you do the jump easier to take 2 bounces. For this bit here, you don't have to land this far back. You can actually land really far forward on this. It's pretty safe from the bounce we did on top. And you're just trying to aim at this edge. Now, in this particular run, I did hit this edge very clean and got a very low bounce. It's quite fast. You do want to be carrying some amount of leftward. If you're coming here and you're still going forward along this line, you are going to really struggle to cleanly hit this rock. You'll have to do a big loop around, and it's doable, but it's difficult. It's challenging. So yeah, I'd encourage you to try this edge thing here. It is one of the more frustrating parts of the run though, so I wouldn't push it super hard. You just want to be able to get some amount of catching the edge rather than the face, right? And that'll push you over to the left. Take this. The part we're trying to hit is this triangle here, but it's not super finicky. Anything below this here, you just don't want to hit this one. This is fine. This will probably throw you to an awkward angle. It's quite easy to hit this triangle though. You catch that, dropping down, and see, we're trying to take this line down the rock here, and you can see there's this dark spot here, so that's generally what I'm aiming for, is this dark area. And don't try and go fast here, it's super easy to die. You just want to basically get here. I actually land a little bit higher than where I normally aim here for safety. Didn't realise that. So yeah, you're just trying to hold towards the rocks. Just keep it safe. You're just trying to slide down. You don't want to lose connection with the rocks, because then you'll gain speed very fast. We're actually going quite downwards here. It's hard to convey with the camera, but this is quite a steep slope. So you're going to slide down here, catch this rock here, and see we've caught this part of the rock. See, if we bounced off of it, we'd land up here, which would slow us down quite a lot. We'd bounce very high rather than out to the side here. We get bounced really nice and low, really soft bounce. Now, if you've seen speedruns of this, you'll immediately have recognised it's a bit strange that we've gone off to the right here and down here. There's a lot of different ways to try and end a run, and I've just found that apart from like the meta one that we do in the fast speedruns, there's really not much in the way of options that are safe, reliable. The typical speedrun approach is, even I die on it, it's still 80% of the time, which is quite frustrating when you're trying to learn a run, where you keep having fast runs that you lose, runs that are definitely PB by several seconds, and you just lose the run because you just died at the end. So that's the idea with this, is this ending is what I found ages ago when I was first learning the game, before I knew about the proper one. It's just very safe, it's very secure. It loses about a second and a half, but if you're 5 seconds out of your PB, who cares, right? It's and if your PB has the same ending, then it's not losing anything to your PB. Incorporating safety after you've done the fast way can be really unrewarding, whereas if you start with safety and then incorporate risk as you go, it's a lot more rewarding. So yeah, we hold to the right here. We're not trying to gain a lot of speed, we want to land. I think if we try to carry too much speed, we will fall past this edge, and we don't want that. We want to catch the face at the very least, but the edge is okay. So we can get a nice solid connection here. Just to slow us down again, we're just trying to land relatively low. We can catch this edge here, and that'll push us a bit more. Sometimes that can be a little bit risky, but it's nice, it's quick. Bounce and land. So here's where most of the intricacy is. You're trying to catch this edge, you're aiming to bounce off to the side here, and you're falling quite far. This stalk down here is quite far below us. So we want to try and get a nice safe bounce here. We don't want to push this too hard. If we try and fall too low, we will gain too much speed and we might die. So you note that as we get close here, things are starting to go grey. You can see that the mushrooms are starting to lose their colour. We're getting quite close to death. If we tried to land down here or over here, we'd probably die. Land up here behind the stalk, get a natural bounce over here, and we've got kind of this whole mushroom to work with. You can kind of go for what you want. Try this one out a little bit. Experiment with it. I generally found that you can hit anywhere along here and you'll survive, you'll be okay. If you try and land too low, sometimes you'll actually die on hitting the mushroom, so don't push it too hard. You can see I hit it pretty low here and it's getting pretty grey. It's actually very close to death. This is it's a frame or two away from death. But we survive it. We catch this edge, we land, we hit our target of about 42-second run. That was my goal for this route, and I hit it with a couple of quicker than normal bits, but as you learn the run, you will start to push different aspects of this run faster and faster, so I hope that's helpful. Okay, so I've got a second run here. This is what I'm calling a moderate run, but for most people this is going to be kind of the whole area of improvement that you target. You'll probably be pretty satisfied once you've got a good run of this. You'll understand why when you see it to the end, but before I show it, I just want to kind of iterate on a change of mentality somewhat from the easier run. The easy run, I mentioned during it, a run you finish is far more valuable than a fast run you don't, especially when you're learning the game, when you're learning the run, when you're learning the movement and the physics and the interactions. It's far more valuable to actually see the end of a run than it is to have something really, really fast 100 times but you die every single time. Once you start taking on some of these strategies, you are giving up on that, especially the ending. We'll talk about it when we get there, but the ending sucks. Going fast sucks. There's no getting around it. There is no fast ending that is also consistent. So let's jump into it again. Do the same thing. We're going to run through the whole run, give a very quick overview as we go, and then I will talk through specific moments, specific parts that you want to look out for, and information you'll need. Okay, we start out basically exactly the same. Have a little reset there. You just want to learn to push this a little further. You're going to learn the limits of your own pace. We're going to do a little bit different. We're going to catch the edge. They're much more gentle. Get a skim. We're going to get a skim here as well to allow us to land further forward. Everything else here is basically the same. But when we jump here, we're not going to jump on this ramp, so we need to go fast. We're going to carry as much speed as we can so we can just catch the edge here without jumping. Bounce here, same. nice skim. We're going to take a little bit more speed through this, but not that much. We're going to go left here instead. We're going to carry on straight forward, bounce here, hit this mushroom, veer to the left, and then we've got a bit of ricochet. 1, 2, 3, 4, end. That is the ending I was talking about. It sucks. So let's just run back to the start and we'll talk through this. So, as I said, the start is basically unchanged. It's more or less the same strat. Yeah, we're doing all the same things here. The only difference is here. So I'm doing the same bounce off the left, but instead of trying to land on top of the plank here, I am trying to catch this edge here to move. It's going to push me more forward, but it's going to give me much less of a bounce upward. When you bounce up, you have to wait to fall back down. So we're trying to minimize those where we don't need them. And because we have a nice safe landing here, you can catch this pretty thin and still survive. Sometimes I'm shocked by how much you survive it. Catching it super duper thin doesn't really save you that much time though, because you land with a lot more speed. And when you land with a lot more speed, you bounce much higher, which means you take longer to unbounce, to fall back to the ground. So don't sit here trying to push this to the absolute limit. You just want some kind of bounce that doesn't take you upwards off of this thing here. If you do get a very, very fast one, you can try and lower your speed by hitting the wall on the left here, but then it's really difficult to get a smooth transition round the plank. So I would just suggest not bothering with it. Just try and get a clean bounce. This is very clean. So I have little benchmarks in my head for what times are good, and here we land with a 977. This is fine. This is a perfectly good start. I'd be very happy with this on this route. Now on here, we want to land as far forward as possible because we are falling. The falling is going to take about the same amount of time no matter what we do. So we want to cover as much of the ground we want to cover as early as possible. That means we want to push forward early. If we try and land basically forward of this line here, this line on the ground, we will die. But if we veer in and catch this wall, we can land pretty far forward. How to do this time? Not great, it was fine. We had a lot of forward momentum, so it's still pretty nice. Same thing we want to catch here, same thing as I discussed in the easy run. You can't really veer too much towards here unless you veer very heavily off to the side, and I find you lose a lot of speed with that anyway, and it makes the next part harder. So just stick with this. You're just trying to push as much forward as you can. You see we've got bounced quite up and backwards there relative to our landing speed, but we're still traveling forward, and it gives us a really nice setup for this nice low bounce here. So we're landing here about 17 seconds. That was my target for this run. We jump, and again, we are no longer jumping in this pipe. This is the biggest shift in this run. Apart from the ending, is we are no longer jumping in this pipe. That puts a lot more strain on doing this jump properly. So if we cut back here, we're not going full speed here, and we're not trying to absolutely maximize our forward because we're going to jump here. We need to land in the pipe anyway. We can jump well past the pipe if we have full speed and we carry on forward. We don't want that. That's not useful to us. We want to land, and we are trying to land in such a way that we carry as much speed as possible down the pipe. There's a bunch of things we can do to manage that, but the simplest thing we can do to manage it to begin with is if we get a bit closer here. Yeah, you can see the pipe has this sort of angular structure to it, and we are wanting, because we're coming in from the left, we want to, our momentum is carrying us to the right. These faces on the right are going to carry us back to the left. They're going to correct our momentum a little bit. We do not want to touch this. This will be a side hit, and side hits will just slow us right down. What we want is to catch this one, or ideally actually this one. This one's beautiful if you can catch it clean, but it's quite narrow, it's quite a difficult target. If we carry on forward here, you can see I barely catch that one. So this is a really nice trajectory, but you can see I actually lose quite a bit of speed because I land on this one. That's okay though. If I'm carrying all the speed in the world, and you can kind of tell it from the sound, I don't know how loud that's come through. The steps are fast, but they're not mega fast, but we're still on the ground here. You can see the opposite end, the exit of the pipe, also has this structure, this angular structure. We can make use of that. We've got enough speed to make this transfer, but not going along the ground. But if we come over here, we can get a little bump up right as we get to, because if our angle is this way, we're bouncing off of these edges. and get a little bit of a rise, and that'll slow us down a little bit, but it'll mean we survive the transfer. So you can see, I'll just reverse a little bit here, you can see we sort of take that line across here. There is a ton of technical nonsense that I can talk about with this pipe and getting high speed and then maximizing speed without dying. I will not go into it here, but I will say that you can lose a lot of runs on this when you're not comfortable with it. It's very easy to get disheartened by something like this if your success rate of maintaining speed is low. Something which I think about an awful lot with speedrunning is it's kind of a numbers game, kind of a probability game. You're never 100% consistent on anything, especially in this game where everything's just a little bit chaotic. But if you're 50% consistent on something, then missing it 5 times in a row is unusual, but it happens. You know, you flip a coin 50 times, there's a very good chance that you're going to have a run of 5 tails in there. If your probability is lower, like 15 or 20% for success, then it doesn't just become reasonable to get 5 misses in a row, it actually becomes very likely to get 5 misses in a row. If you think of rolling a die and expecting a 6 every time, that's not going to happen. You know, you're going to get a 6 sometimes and it's going to feel great, but quite often you're going to have these little droughts where you just don't get one. So it's just something to think about. It's worth getting as good at this as possible and get as consistent as this as possible. I'm going to discuss making practice maps later. It's a really useful way of practicing some of these finickier bits, which can really accelerate your consistency. So we'll carry on here. We go into this platform. Every bit of your body is going to tell you you're trying to optimize this. Don't worry about that just now. Have a look at the quality of the bounce I got on this. It's fine. I went a little bit up. If you start comparing to world record, this is going to look terrible. Don't compare to world record. That's not what you're going for right now. You're going to catch this edge any way you can survive. I'm basically on top of it. That means that I'm guaranteed to survive it, basically, right? I'm catching it super far to the right and I'm getting pushed a lot to the left. That's kind of okay. This leg actually slopes down to the right, so the further to the left you land, you're just slightly increasing your chances of survival. You're not likely to die, but it can happen for a bounce like that. The lower you catch that edge, the more likely you are to carry extra speed because of the angle of it. You carry a bunch of extra downward speed, you will land a lot faster, you run the risk of dying. This is one of the biggest death points when you're going fast. When you're trying to really push your speed, this is one of the most common places to die. So just bear that in mind. Don't push it too hard. As I said in the easy run, if you never push this too hard, then it's never something you're losing time on. There are more important things to worry about, like getting a good end, like getting a good start, like getting clean through the rocks ahead. They're more important than getting a perfect bounce here. So we come down here again. Again, I've landed pretty far back on this run. You can land pretty far forward, but you can see it's starting to grey. It's starting to grey out, so you can't go crazy with it. And you're going to bounce forward, and again, at this stage, you should be trying to figure out how to catch this edge a bit more clean. I'm coming from quite far to the left. This makes it quite difficult. Ideally, you want to swing out to the right a little bit and get more in line with this edge, so that you're kind of running parallel to it and directly at it, and then you can just start timing when do you start holding left to move towards this rock. And this one, maximize, sorry, I catch it very thin, and so I get a very decent one, but actually if you listen, that sound there says that the game interpreted that, I think, as a landing pretty much on the top. So I didn't catch it as thin as I thought I did. Getting sent far to the left. I'm having to hold to the right a little bit here just to so that I don't land too high up. That can be really risky because if you miss this, your runs over, you're dead. But I land here. See, I started aiming for this edge when I was trying to go fast, for like around this edge here, because it gives a good trajectory. It's a little risky though, because if you hit this point down here, all of these different points coming together mean that you get really big bounces and you'll just get sent careening off into space. You'll just die instantly. It's really annoying. So I would still edge up here, and you can see I'm still keeping very close to the edge. I'm not really pushing this too hard. I got a really strong bounce. I don't need any more speed. I want to come along here and slide along this face. Don't gain too much additional speed. Once again, we are landing nicely on this triangle, same as before, but this time, instead of veering to the right, we go forward. Now, I'll just show you quickly, we do 2 bounces. 2 bounces there. That's the goal. That means that we are trying to land the second bounce as close to the edge as possible, because that means we've pushed forward at exactly the right moment. If you look, this red line here, there's a little blob at the end of it, just where we start on this red line. That's about where you want to land your first jump. Maybe a little bit past it you can survive it, but aim for about here. It depends on how much speed you're bringing forward, though. If you're coming in faster, you want to land earlier, because you will bounce further. But that's the goal. When you're aiming for this edge, you want to land. You're trying to land on the face, but at this edge. So we'll see we do that. We're lined up nicely. Now, everything from here on out is really annoyingly precise and has a lot of variation to it that you'll have to learn to adapt to. The first things first, you want to land as far in this direction towards this corner as you can, because it doesn't really feel like it, but we're kind of falling right now. We're moving downwards. Forward is down right now. This transfer we're making right now from this surface down to this mushroom is quite a long drop, and we're going to gain a lot of speed as we do so. So the further along as we land, the less we have to drop, the less distance we have to cover. It just makes things a little bit less likely to die. You're not going to die that often when you're not going super duper fast, but some runs you're going to have where you're just going to be flying along. It's good to know where to aim, and this is a good spot to aim, is close to this edge and close to this corner. In this sort of area is ideal. On this run, I think we land about here. Yeah. Let's just zone that. We landed about right on this point of the red. So now we're holding forward. We're not pulling back. The only reason you should ever pull back on this transfer is if you think you're bouncing far enough that you're going to hit the upper face here. The mushroom has a structure where it has this sort of ring around it. We're aiming for that ring. If you think you're going to miss the ring entirely and hit the mushroom, then you have to hold back. Otherwise, just hold forward until about here. And you're aiming to land. You don't want to aim for right at this edge. You want to aim somewhere in this area here, because now you're going to hold left. That's going to push you to the left. That's largely because of how this game, I'm not 100% sure exactly what the code is saying, but when we hold in a direction, we tend to bounce in that direction. I think it's to do with the fact that we, the player, are controlling the ball, and when we hold a direction in the air, we start spinning in that direction. And so the ball spinning to the left gives us a better bounce to the left. That's going to become relevant in a second as well. So we're going to catch this. We can see we're very close to dying on this one. Catch that here. We got a really nice bounce all the way to the left. Now, I'm just going to run through the ending again, just to show it, just so you know what I'm talking about when we get to it. There's 4 bounces we're targeting, and they're not all built equal. So, got 1, 2, 3, 4. The first and the third ones are by far the worst. They are really important. The second one, you will get what you get based on the first one, and the fourth one's kind of the same. You'll get what you get based on the third one. So, when we hit this mushroom here, I said you want to hold left, you want to get out to the left. The reason for that is we want to try and straighten up. As we come down this, we want to be traveling off the edge of this disc as down slope as possible. We don't want to be veering left or right. We don't want to be edging to the left or right as we come down it. We want to be going pretty straight. That just gives us the most control over the next part. So we do this. I'm going to slow this down a bit. As we come to the edge, we're going to come over. We're going to be holding forward until about now when we start holding left, because we want to get a good bounce and we want it to check our bounce a little bit, rather than if we held right here, we would sort of head off in this direction. We have a real chance of missing or getting a bad bounce on this one up here. It is survivable. There's 1,000 ways to do this. I should be absolutely clear. There's 1,000 ways to survive this, but there's 100,000 ways to die. It's hard to see here, but there is a face here that we're trying to hit. We want to hit the face around about here from this angle. If you're coming down the slope more in the center, you can still hit it down here. I would just suggest being more to the left. I find it more consistent, but absolutely do your own experimentation, find what works for you. So as we're going, I'm holding left, I start turning my camera now. This is a great point to observe that I'm on controller, and that has some limitations, and the biggest one there is my camera turn speed. I can only turn the camera so fast. If you're playing with keyboard and mouse, you can whip the camera way faster than I can. That might mean that you are more comfortable using your camera and holding mostly forward through this entire section. You know, look a bit to the left and swing to the right and aim the camera. So when I'm telling you directions here, I'm really just telling you directions based on what I'm doing with the camera I have. I'll try and give you them in absolute terms, point towards this or point to the left of this. But sometimes I might slip on that, apologies. So we get this bounce here, and that's going to take us towards this sort of area of this mushroom. We're going to hit around about here. This is about what we want. You can hit all the way up here, and we can hit all the way down here. They are survivable, but it's just awkward. It's not very visible here, but there is an edge along here, and you've got that band I was talking about before with the mushrooms going along here. We are not really wanting to hit this. I think you can survive it fine if you hit the edge, but I found that the bounce you get is so much more consistent if you catch it here. The one thing that landing lower down does is it doesn't give you a lot of time to adjust. But you're basically a passenger at this point, just trying to hold forward as cleanly as possible. If you've got a bad first bounce, you're toast. It doesn't matter. I'm going to catch this here. Now, at this moment you have very little time to make an adjustment, but you can make adjustments. We are trying to land in this face, in this triangle. We are wanting it to push us down and to the left, down and to the left, back into the left. If we catch this face, we will get pushed just straight back. There is another mushroom there. If you prefer, you can try and hit that one on the way down, but I find it slower and I find it pretty difficult to land. So instead, what we're doing is we are aiming to hit this triangle, and that means I've hit this second bounce quite far to the right, and so I'm landing very close to this edge. So here I should probably make an adjustment. Instead of just holding forward, I holding forward left. But in terms of time, you don't have a lot of time to make this adjustment. If you look, this is 36:13, and by the time we hit it, it's 36:54. Like, we're very close. Yeah, we've got half a second to make this adjustment. So you want to sight the adjustment if you need to make it up here. Start holding left probably here is when you would make the adjustment. So you're hitting a bit further left on this crack. But if once you've done this and had a bit of experience of the ending, you'll understand why I'm being very vague with my direction here. So hold forward into this second bounce, down, try and hit this triangle on the left. So hold forward, probably a bit left. I catch it really clean here, and then you just have to sight your landing here. You can hit this upper face here, or you can hit the edge here. The edge is faster, or the rim, I should say, the ring around the outside. The ring is faster, but you're much more likely to die if you hit it, because you hit it too thin, you won't scrub off enough speed. Hitting the top here is a lot safer, but sometimes you'll actually end up falling too far. So neither is 100% safe. But you want to land, you can see the mushroom is tilted to the left down here, downward. So you want to hit it over on the left for sure. You don't want to hit it up here. Again, it is survivable, but the margins are much narrower. On this particular one, I think I catch it just on the face, but I hit it really hard. I'm pushing forward a lot. I've got a lot of forward velocity. So I hit it quite hard. I bounce off that edge. And as you can see, yeah, the environment hasn't graded very much. I'm not that close to death. I've got a few more frames of falling I could have done pretty safely. So we're in okay shape. And so that gives us a 38.51. As I sort of said at the start, that this is probably the only run you're going to need to compare to. You're probably not going to need to learn any tricks beyond this to get your target time. Right now, a 38.5 is 7th on the leaderboard, or would put this run 7th on the leaderboard on speedrun.com. For most people, this is the unlock you need. These strats will get you a sub 40 with mistakes. Will even get you a sub 39 with some very minor mistakes. This run wasn't perfect, but it was, I think, a very clean example of the route. my goal for this was just to get a 38 with this route, and I had several runs which were on this kind of pace. But the ending's difficult, and when you're trying to do the ending in a sort of replicable way, it actually ends up being harder. The thing I recommend the most is practice the ending, set up a practice map, and iterate, 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 practice, 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 and you'll get there. Something I want to show off a little bit are some of the alternative strats, specifically for the ending, because, as I said, other people have found their own consistency, and while these are a little bit slower, I think it's worth showing off. Okay, so the first of the alternate endings I'm going to show you is from a run by the Bear Trap. It's a very recent run. They've found their own sort of approach. This is kind of reminiscent of what the tool-assisted run does for the ending, but in a much more safer, human feasible way. The way it's executed in this particular run at the end of a personal best is it's a little bit suboptimal, but I think there is some potential for this to be a little bit faster, but I found it really difficult to make consistent. They found success with it. I'm not going to tell them they're doing anything wrong, but this loses about a second and a half to a really fast standard ending, but you might find it faster or more consistent, so I'm not going to tell you not to do it. That's why I'm showing you. So I'm just going to show the lead up here. It's very similar. Turn the volume down a little. They get a very low bounce here, and then go direct. I wouldn't recommend this hugely because it's really difficult to control the speed, but if you're managing it, then go right ahead. Like I always found managing the speed off of these bounces really difficult, but they seem to get it really clean. It's really good, and they're killing their speed. I believe they're holding back quite a bit here to try and kill their speed, and they're trying to land, I think, right on this little triangle here, like just at the top of this face. Yeah, to get a really, like, you can see they're millimeters from death here. This is like so close to the maximum survivable drop. Yeah, that's how close they are to death here. That's why I don't like this. I found it very difficult to make this consistent, because if you're going a little bit faster on the disc up here, then you just die, and they're going pretty fast. So maybe there's some leg room to it. Bounce here, and then they aim to catch this here. Now I think, I'm not 100% sure, but with the degree of bounce you get here, I think you might be able to land here and go to the sort of typical ending path. If so, this could be really, really quick. But they choose to take this. This is the alternate mushroom I was talking about when you land on this face in the typical route. You have to swing the camera around, and thus I never go for it. But some people have done it. I think I've seen Flaunch do it in a run before. They take it over here, and they land on this face here, which is just the unfortunate thing about taking this mushroom is you have to kind of land over here. I believe you can take some connections off the side or whatever, but it's just slow. You get a big bounce up, and that's what makes this particularly slow. I think without that bounce with a quicker ending, this could be, yeah, probably about half a second to a second quicker. It's that much of a difference, but I haven't tested that much myself because I have not found a lot of success with it. Okay, so the other ending I want to show off, and I think this one's really interesting. It has some real potential. Again, I struggle to make it fast, but in terms of a more consistent, more standard meta-like ending that you can sort of learn the run up to and all that, and then just sort of ease off if you're getting a bad run up or something. This seems like a pretty good example of that. So yeah, this is from Downball. I really like this strat. I think it looks really cool. I've not been able to find a lot of success with it, but it was a very cool one to see. I was very intrigued by it. So it starts very similar. You get the mushroom bounce in. Let's change the volume down again. It's a very loud run. So you get the mushroom bounce in as usual, and so yeah, you're aiming really far to the left. Where we were trying to hit, it's very blurry in this, where we were trying to hit this face here, they're trying to catch this face or potentially the edge above it. And then you bounce over and you get a much higher bounce, and you've got a lot more control over where you hit on this second mushroom. They use that to sort of curve round, and rather than aiming for this face, they go for this one and to go for this alternative mushroom that I spoke about before, and that the Bear Trap also attacked on their one. But because they've got so much more control over their landing here, instead of going for the stalk, they actually go directly for this face and get a really smooth and low bounce and finish it here. Give me 1 second, let me just see how much how much slower this is than normal. Okay, so world record had a pretty good end. Hey there, editor, just dropping in for a second. I ran myself around in circles on this, trying to figure out how much slower this is than the meta way. I ended up just miscounting some stuff. The long and short is that it's about 1 second to 1.5 seconds slower than the sort of standard approach, and that's pretty quick. It's comparable with the other ending we looked at, and I think worth learning for that reason. I also think it looks really cool. So yeah, back to the live version of me. I think this is actually a really neat run, a neat approach to the end, but it is definitely a good bit slower than the typical way. If you can avoid getting too much height, I think they might jump here, I'm not 100% sure. It's difficult to tell. It seems very low if it is a jump. But, you know, the issue with safety, the issue with the ending is that we have a meta. I don't know who found the meta route, but once it's found, you can't unfind it, right? You know it's like a second faster than every alternative. You just kind of need to learn it when you get to the point of trying to really push your runs to fast times. There's a bunch of other strats which I have not shown yet, and that I don't think you need to worry about while you're trying to get like a sub 38. But you just need to know the ending. You need to be able to do it. Even if you back out of it, you need to know how to do it. But yeah, these serve as alternatives that can give you backups. At this level of the game, you need to be able to survive your runs. And that's no longer about playing safe, it's about playing alternative paths. Alternative avenues, you know, my usual thing isn't going to work, let's try something different. And these endings give you a chance at that. Okay, so the first of the higher level strats that I want to show off is a couple of variations on an alternative to the end of the village section here when you drop off of this last plank. Bouncing on the ground, catching the pillar on the way down there, and then sort of veering off to the side. It's not the fastest, especially the landing at the cliff side on the way down, right? You bounce kind of the wrong way, it kind of slows you down, you lose a lot of momentum. This is a way that where we try to avoid that landing, and we do it by essentially using the pillar itself instead of catching the face. We use the edge. I'll just show you. I'll show you and we can go from here. This is the first variation on it. Very like the typical way, except we take this hit here and then bounce. So this is about 1/2 second or so faster than the typical way. It can be a little faster, but this is a very good one. I would say this one's clean. You still take the same bounce here. You veer a bit more to the right, and you catch this face. That's what this is. This makes it awkward, right? You're trying to catch us just to the left of the angle, so you get pushed off to the left. And then you try to land very close. You have to land very close. Like this line here is kind of the defining line of the edge of how far you can go. If you imagine this is the highest point of this whole section, only really this area here is above the death plane, essentially, for how far you're falling. If you get a really nice connection, you can maybe land a little lower, but why would you? If you get a really, really nice connection, you might try and land over here, and you can get some really nice bounces across here. But this is really good. I found it very consistent once you get the timing on it. As you can see, you bounce very low, get a lovely bounce here, just skim over these two edges. You do have to, when you're doing this, you can't land right at the edge. You're falling a little bit too far. So you do have to land sort of on the slope and then come down and allow your coyote time to save you a little bit. Jump during that 0.3 seconds where you are bouncing. And during that time, you're coming a bit more outward from the cliff than you were in the other routes. So you do need to kind of hold left. And so that thing I was talking about where the ball is spinning in the air, it can sort of affect your bounces. It also affects your jumps. And by holding to the left, you start the spin to the left. It just gives you a bit more leeway to keep veering to the left in the air. On this particular example, I actually missed, but that's not important. This works. I've done it many times. This is just an example, a really clean example of the bounce itself. This here is an alternate based on an old alternate path at the bottom of the village that I found ages ago, and it's kind of never really been that useful except as, oh no, I fell and I went the wrong way and I'm going way too far to the right. So here it is, same starting point as that one. I bounce to the right, and so you can see this here is a really interesting construction, right? We can kind of see there's an edge and a little drop and a flat surface. That's ripe for this kind of move, where we can come straight down and get bounced off of this edge and immediately off this face and get kind of catapulted forward with quite a lot of speed. So we hold forward here and we're aiming to land right on this edge here, somewhere around this corner. We get the same kind of glancing blow, but we're catching more of the face here just because of the angle we're coming at. But we're starting with so much more momentum in this direction that it doesn't really matter. And we get the same kind of landing. And we make exactly the same sort of pace. I really like this one. I think it's very, very satisfying to hit. But I think the other one is simpler and easier to learn. So I would suggest learning the other one. But if you enjoy a little bit of flair in your runs, this is great. I love this. I wish this strat was faster in general, but hey, I'll take equal. Equal's great. Okay, so next things I have to show you are what I consider to be kind of bullshit. There are sort of things which are really, really fast, but they're kind of bullshit in terms of how difficult they are to incorporate into a run reliably. I would love to show you a single run where I did all three, but the truth of it is I have not had a single very, very good run where I've done all three. I have had some decent ones, but you usually die in some ways because these are very, very difficult tricks, and then I still have to do the very, very difficult ending. But I can show you them individually, and that's actually kind of preferable here because there's a couple of variations on one of them that I want to show off. The first thing I'm going to show is an alternative approach to the pipe. Well, actually, the very, very first thing I'm going to show is how fast the pipe section can be if everything goes perfectly, the traditional way. I show this because it's almost unbeatably fast. This particular one, this is one of my old world records. It's a really, really good run, but this was disgracefully fast. Close to the fastest I've ever done. And it was using no clever tricks. It was just really, really good bounces, very good luck, and the ability to not die on doing so. So, come down here as usual, we jump, and as you can see, we land quite far down the pipe. We've jumped very late, so we're not at great risk of dying here, and we're landing right probably just on this face. That's going to drag us quite a lot to the left. Now this allows us to do something quite cool. See if you can spot it. That was really fast, right? What happened here is when I went over here, I'm holding to the right here. I catch on this transition. I get a little bit of air as I do so. I sort of ride up this. I'm holding right, and to the right there's nothing. I get a little bit of air, and so instead of running, I'm actually falling forward right now. That gives me huge velocity. And I just barely catch on the edge of the platform here. If you listen, I'll up the volume a little. You hear that? We just barely, we get a little pause. That's us catching a bit of air, and we're skiting forward now really, really fast. That means we can go further to the left here and land, catch this really low. Remember, thing to remember here is that our camera is actually above where our physical body is in the game. We're a ball, we're rolling around. Our camera's a bit above, so we're actually, the ball here is just hitting just below this edge. We get a really flat low bounce, and we go very grey, but we survive, and we carry on forward. So that is basically as good as it gets, but you'll note that this landing I got, well, the drop was super efficient, among the fastest I've ever done. The landing was pretty poor, and we end up losing a bit of speed here, and a bit of pace over to this section. So this alternative strategy with its two variations sort of fixes that. So this is the first one. Basically, the main thing I want you to have picked up from that previous run is getting a bit of air in the pipe is better than running down the full length of it, because running has a speed limit, and falling has a speed limit where you die, but it's much higher than the running speed limit. And so if we can avoid dying, who cares? So this is a different run. and we take a slightly different approach. Same start, but instead of landing in the pipe, we land on the edge. We land on the edge here, and that allows us to bounce all the way down here, and we can just get a really clean bounce towards the edge here. Now we end up coming with a bit more speed than normal, and you got quite a high bounce. You can mitigate that to some extent by trying to land on this, but I wouldn't recommend it. Just take the bounce. This is super fast. You know, the trade-off is that you're going bloody fast to begin with. And we get what looks like quite a slow bounce here, but really we're bouncing almost perfectly flat. And that means that we could push. See, I land relatively high up the slope again, out of habit, out of an abundance of safety, but I could have probably pushed right down to the edge here for a bit more pace. And we carry on our run. In this, this was a very, very fast run. This was a world record at the time, this particular run. This here, if you can see the name of the clip, it's Weird Pipe Bounce. This is one of the first times I did this edge clip. Instead of going on the right, you go on the left. This has two benefits. One is you just got less distance to cover, and so it's just a little bit easier to do, but I find the lineup a lot harder because we're not trying to catch this face. We're trying to catch a face on this one. We're just trying to catch an edge here. And that means there's a lot more variation. We're just a little bit to the left, we get sent a bunch more to the left, and a little bit more to the right, we get sent a bunch more to the right. But if we land it nicely, we get sent very far forward, and we're kind of going exactly where we want to go. With the other one, we had to kind of adjust our line. Going exactly where we want to go. We got really fast here, and yeah, another really fast bounce. These are comparable in pace to the very, very, very fast normal way. So while they're not much faster than the best you can do just by catching the pipe really nicely, I'm not exaggerating when I say that this was 1 in 1,000, this pace. Whereas these, I get this pace more or less every time I catch this edge. I get this kind of pace if I don't die. So it goes from being like a 1 in 1,000 thing to like a 1 in 10. I'll take 1 in 10 every single day, especially if it's more survivable. Okay, so the last bullshit strat I want to show you, again, I want to reiterate, you do not need to learn these. These are just to show you where the limit of things are and where the fastest strats come from if you're ever looking to really push beyond it. And I'm not around to give you pointers on any of these strats. These videos will hopefully serve as a bit of a guidance on that. We have two strats. One is very new, something which I've only implemented in the last couple months for this most recent world record push. And the other is very old and has been the worst trick in the game for almost a year now. Nobody enjoys learning it. I think it's terrible. I regret finding it. I think this would be a better speed game if I had never found this trick, but I found it, and so here we are. So, first of all, the one that's not absolutely diabolical. We start looking pretty much as normal, but instead of taking this bounce over here, we instead bounce past it, and we land down here, catch an extra plank, and go down here. Now this looks suspicious, doesn't it? I'm not going the normal way, am I? We're not focused on that right now. So what are we doing here? We are skipping this little faceplant down here and then the drop down to this roof down here. The main reason this is good is that we're pretty much always falling on this one. With the drop down to this roof, we have this section where we bounce across to the plank that sends us downward. That period we're going almost entirely horizontal. We kind of eliminate that with this particular route. We get the same kind of bounce as we did before. And then we're just kind of going down the whole way. This ends up saving from nothing. It can be just as slow or the same speed as the normal way, and can save up to about half a second, I reckon. It's difficult because I haven't really incorporated this into using the non-bullshit strategies. I haven't tried this with a regular start. I've only really been doing this with real bullshit runs because I'm pushing for the last couple of tenths of optimization to get a new world record, to push that time right down. So I don't know exactly how much time this saves, but for the runs I'm doing, it has improved the ceiling of my starts by about 0.4. So that's quite a lot of time to save in the first 10 seconds of a run like this. So we bounce past this cliff instead of hitting it as we do normally. We're falling down here. Now, if we try to just fall straight at this edge, at this this plank, we're going to die. It's too far. But as we're bouncing past, we get a tiny little brush. There's not even a sound on this video. Let me see if there's any sound for this one. Right, there is. So you can hear it right there. There is a clip on the edge. That's quite a heavy one, but it doesn't really matter. You just want to make sure you slow down. Here we need to get another little edge clip so that we get a nice direct angle down here. We still need to hit this wall on the side here. We're going way too fast. We're actually higher up than we were for this one, but we're coming with a steeper angle, so we're going to get a stronger hit. We're going to lose more speed. We catch this, and you can absolutely hit this plank from this angle. I've done it a number of times. It's very fast. That's why I think it would still be fast for the normal routes where we drop down to the bottom and carry on from there. I think it's still going to be fast for that, but I haven't really tested. You're carrying a lot more speed, so I'm not 100% sure. But on this one, it's more natural to me to bounce here and then bounce over to this one and catch the edge of this one. And then from there it's basically the same. The reason I'm catching this one rather than this one is the next part is the other bullshit trick of this particular clip. It is what we've been calling pillar drop. This is the pillar and this is the drop. This is faster simply because we can catch the edge of this platform, and so instead of bouncing up, we bounce forward, and we also get to skip bouncing down here. So we skip 2 bounces in exchange for kind of having our path written for us and praying for success. This is probably the lowest percentage trick in the game. I probably get it about 1 in 10. Sometimes I'll have runs of getting really good form on it and I'll get it every time for like 3 or 4 in a row. But generally speaking, I don't expect to hit this more than 10 to 20 times an hour, and considering the length of this run, that's, yeah, I'd say 20 times an hour is probably me on really good consistency. So what is the trick? I will show you and then we will rewind and we will talk through it. There's a lot to unpack here. So first of all, I am bouncing off here. I'm getting a lot of bounces, right? I'm losing a lot of speed. I don't want a lot of speed. You can absolutely do this faster. But I was saying I can get about, maybe 1 in 10 on this trick. If you carry all the speed in the world into it, 1 in 30 at best. It's brutally hard if you carry full speed into it. Doable, but brutal. Second, I'm actually not catching this edge. I am aiming for this one here. This is a little trick I found. Again, to increase consistency. I'm probably losing a couple of tenths doing this. If I land up here, the edge itself will carry me a little bit over to the right, which is where I want to go anyway. But I'm starting from further left, and so I get to hit this corner, this edge here. I get to hit it more face on rather than favouring one of the sides too strongly. Like if I'm thinking about where I'm coming from way over here, I'm basically getting 100% of this side and then edge, and I'm getting none of this side that's on the other side of the edge. If I come from further left, I'm getting a little bit more down the middle of the edge, and that's really what I want for this trick. You really want to try and catch this as far around as possible, but as I say, from this perspective, we're kind of limited in our options. So I like to hit here and go that way. The secondary benefit is if I don't get a perfect edge bounce, if I catch more of the face than the edge, it still sends me in kind of the right direction, instead of me bouncing off of this flat thing and bouncing way into the air and then I'm really slow. This pushes me off to the side and I can vector that and sort of lean over and still have an attempt, right? This is all about maximizing attempts. Sure, maybe still only 1 in 30 of them or 1 in 50 of them is super duper fast. But if 1 in 10 of them are fast enough to carry on and see if I can, push harder later, that's great. Even at this level, surviving runs is the most important thing. So we do this. Now, as I said before, we're kind of trying to catch as much of this face as possible, the sort of the traditional face we hit on our way down. This is because we really are praying for a favourable bounce. We are trying to get pushed away from the pillar, but not very, very fast. We're going to get pushed away moderately fast because we need to pull ourselves back and bounce off the pillar again a couple of times on the way down. The best way to do that is to take this bounce and then completely let go of any directional buttons as we hit it. This seems counterintuitive, but we have found through trial and error that this allows you to recover your control a bit faster, and it allows you to get a little bit further away from the cliff. If you're holding right the whole time, you're going to spend like the minimum amount of time before you get the next bounce. Most of the time, that's actually not long enough. You're going to come in at a very shallow angle and you're not going to scrub off a lot of speed. I actually, when I'm doing this, I flick the stick left really quickly before I go neutral, just to maximize the effect. For this first one especially, you want to get quite far away from the wall before you come back in, and then you're going to bounce. And again, on each of these bounces, you're going to let go of the directional arrows just for less and less time each time. So I'm essentially doing, if I'm letting go for say, half a second here, then maybe down to like a quarter of a second on that one, and then I'm just holding and hoping that I get a good one. At this point here, like right before I land, I am holding forward. Now you'll note, this contains an extra layer of bullshit. I'm not bouncing very hard when I hit the ground. I'm going way forward. What's the deal with that? Well, as we discussed on the previous one of the previous alternative strategies, this bit of geometry looks really compelling, doesn't it? Got a flat surface, an edge, a tiny little drop down, and then another flat surface. What we're doing here is, as we land, the surface of our player character is catching this edge and then bouncing forward and immediately hitting this face and getting transferred up. So instead of us hitting this flat surface directly, we're hitting it actually at quite a shallow angle and getting bounced with a lot of speed. 2 bounces are way faster than 1 in this case. This is what makes pillar drops supremely bullshit. If we were just going for typical just survive landings and landing like down here and then running over, the alternatives I showed previously are pretty much as fast or faster than that. But with this has the potential to be extremely quick. So we see here, if you watch it in real time, we just have full running speed immediately, and we bounce over the edge here, so we're going even faster, and then we can carry on as before. And again, this is a world record run. It's incredibly quick from here on out. There's a lot to pull together. What's crazy about this though is this isn't even the fastest version of this trick. There is an even bigger bullshit here. Let me find a clip for you. Okay, so this looks like a perfectly normal pillar drop. You can see on this particular run, this is from a few months ago. Pretty standard pace. What we're on, yeah. So we haven't, at this point, we haven't incorporated the alternative start. So we're landing at about 10 seconds. So we go for our pillar drop. Nice bounce. We get quite a nice amount of air on this one, I will say. This first bounce is really nice. We get quite far from it. And we're not even losing grey. We're not going to grey yet, so we're not losing too much. We're not going too fast here. Got a really nice bounce. We're actually quite far along to this back edge. And we land. And we just get catapulted. Now, to give you an idea, I will line up these 2 runs one after the other for you. So this is my world record, 12:72. This is the example run I'm showing you, 13:22. It is almost half a second behind here. The next sort of like equalizing point is the jump at the bottom of the cliff. Let's compare those. This is my world record. And it jumps, yeah, about there. 13:67 or so. 15:67, sorry. Now this jumps a little bit early. I'm going to say I panicked when I was doing this run. I jumped way early. I jumped at... I thought I was dead. So I jumped at 15:37, so actually 3 tenths ahead of this one. But in reality, I would probably jump about here. About here is probably where I'd jump. This is ahead of the world record. It was half a second behind just 3 seconds ago. It's disgusting how fast this bounce was. I don't understand how it happened. I haven't been able to replicate it. I get the vague gist as I'm way further forward. I'm catching this edge way further along. And so I think that gives I think that means I'm able to, instead of landing like very square on this edge, I'm actually landing a bit further forward and still getting the edge, then surface effect. But I don't really understand it fully. It is one of the great mysteries of this game for me. If somebody ever hits this in an actual run and it's world record, it's over, this game's dead. This half second is so hard to find elsewhere. Right now, I think we are within a second of like best ever splits. This world record is so close to optimal. The only thing it's really missing is this section here. I didn't go for one of the edge bounces, but that, just getting that one bounce perfectly in a world record run would just make it so difficult to compare against. Basically impossible. Pillar drop is bullshit. Just a quick addition at the end of things. I actually completely forgot this strat exists, but it belongs at the end here anyway. It is an ultra bullshit strat. This is a strat that I just got accidentally in a run and thought that it'd be replicable. The title of this video is Rock Strat -35 is solved. It was not solved. So here's the strat. You'll see it and I'll explain it. So what are we doing here? Great question. The crux of this is that rather than take the path to the right, we take this path up over the rock instead. And when we get towards the bottom here, this was a strategy I had for a while back, where rather than taking this 2 bounce strat, I was bouncing off of this bit of texture here, getting a really low bounce, and landing down here for a single bounce to get to the next platform. I found it to be less consistent and also maybe marginally faster than the other way, but when you take into account the amount of speed you get to carry by sort of fully holding forward all this direction, I think it roughly evened out. But at this point in time I hadn't fully come to terms with that. I was still trying it out because it was kind of it seemed like it was a faster option. So at this point I ended up getting a really interesting bounce around here. I sort of bounced off here, I catch, you see there's a crease here, it's a very slight valley here, and I end up landing very, very high up on this lower face, which basically is the earliest I can bounce, which allows me to, instead of catching this face here, I can actually pull all the way down and catch this very angled downward face. Now you need to hit the face itself, you can't catch the edge, you have to hit the face on this. But if you do, then rather than get any kind of upward momentum, you actually get a fully down, sit down left angle. That bounces you straight towards the platform, you have very little control, you are probably going to die. And in this run you can see, I very nearly died. But if you do survive it, you can just bounce straight over, bounce over to here. And this run, I just landed a little bit too far. Like if you see, this is past death. This here is the death frame and I still have one more frame to travel. So I was 1 frame away. If I had managed to hold a little more speed here, and if I carry on, I think there was maybe some leeway for it. I'm not sure. It was survivable, but I have had, I have tinkered with it a good bit, and I have been able to make this work maybe 1 in 100 times. It's just not worth doing. To give you an idea of how difficult this strat is, it's included in the tool assisted run, and it is the reason I don't do tool assisted runs anymore. Anytime you improve something earlier in the run, you then have to redo this, and I just hate trying to find the angle. The angle for this is actually shockingly precise. You need perfect bounces in order to want to even catch this face at all, but also to catch it in such a way where you survive the landing here and then also have the pace to make it over to the ending. So this strat exists, it is faster, I don't remember by exactly how much, but I think it is like half a second to a second faster. So I just had a little look, and yeah, it's about 3/4 of a second faster than the normal way. If somebody can find a way to make this consistent, kind of as I said with the fast bounce at the end of pillar drop, if someone can find a way to do this consistently, they've unlocked something completely new. This is unacceptably quick. Terrible strat, absolutely stunning, I love it. I will never be attempting this in runs unless somebody comes up with a really consistent way to execute it, because it's horrible. So, a word on practicing, and specifically on creating practice maps. So what you're looking at just now is the FALLSTRUKTUR directory on my computer. If you want to find this for yourself, you can find this location on the PC Gaming Wiki for your platform, or you can just go to Steam and either right click up here, manage browse local files, or over here in the cog, manage browse local files. This will open up the directory on your machine and will give you, this view here, whatever your system expects. For FALLSTRUKTUR, there is the main structure itself, which is held inside this resources FALLSTRUKTUR directory. You can see in here we've got the maps, textures, logo, and the world.scene. Custom maps are held in this structuring folder. You can see all the ones I've made custom maps of here. So what you want to do to make your own practice map is you want to just take this FALLSTRUKTUR folder from within res, copy it, and paste it into your structuring folder. Now I've already got one just called FALLSTRUKTUR in here, so I'm going to rename it, and we're going to make a little practice map for the spider section. That will give us what we need for this tutorial. I can cover pretty much everything I'm interested in saying. Alrighty, we are in game now, and you can see that if I go to the structure select section, I have now got this FALLSTRUKTUR-spider map in my thing. And if we go to play it, it's just the regular map, right? We haven't changed anything. It is exactly how you'd expect a map to look if we didn't change anything at all. So to make our changes, we can go to the thing here. Instead of selecting play, we'll select open an SDK. This is the source developer kit. This is how you make and change your own maps. You can see not everything is loaded visually. We can move left and right, we can move up, we can move down, and we can do it fast. If you want to see the controls for this, go to options and configure key bindings. I've tweaked these a little bit, but the other controls you have are toggle free cam and toggle editor. So I'll quickly show you what they do. Toggle free cam basically puts you in a practice mode, where you can move the character around. Undo that, you can see that this is where you were and this is where you're supposed to start. If you want to normalize those a little bit, you can reset before you hit the button. Go. The 2 button in this case, the removes the editor, just hides that UI, so while you're moving around you don't have that distracting you see. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to set a custom map up where our starting position is something representative of the part of the map that we're practicing. So I said this is for the spider section, that is the first sort of underground section. So I'm going to click on the red ball, that's us, and I'm going to drag us with these little widgets. The green one is our vertical position, our Y position, and we're going to drag that down with us deep into the map. We can go faster if we want. So we are now roughly at the position we wanted. And when we come down this part of the map, we are sort of coming down this pipe and we hit this one here. So we want to position this where we're going. Now I want to show you something you might instinctively do and sort of show you why that might not work very well. Okay, so immediately we positioned it. Cool. We're positioned, we bounce off of the spider, we're like, this should be good enough, right? This looks like good enough. First thing you're going to notice immediately is when you go in, it's not always exactly right. When you hit reset, it shows you how it will actually reset, and we're pointing the wrong way. So I'm going to hit reset and then also 1 to do this. I'm going to bring back up the menu with 2, and you see the player is pointing the wrong way. We want to be pointing this direction, and the player is pointing directly in the opposite, because that's the starting position in the main map. I'm going to go over to the objects panel on the left here. I'm going to click on the checkbox for player, and that brings up this sort of config for the player. If you do that for another piece like the environment manager, you get a bunch of settings for that. It can be very cool to mess with, but I wouldn't recommend it for the main map. If we go to one of the other map pieces like the final tree here, you can see you get tiling and transforms and all that sort of stuff. Don't touch it for now. We're creating practice maps. We want the map to be as close to normal as possible. So for the player piece up here, we have the X, Y, and Z positions, and this is video game length, so Y is our height, and you can just click and drag these, or you can put in specific values. See, as we wish. These bottom values are the rotations, so this is the horizontal rotation, and this is the vertical rotation. So immediately we're pointing the wrong way, but also when we're doing this map normally, we're pointing down, we're looking, trying to sight our target, right? So I'm going to just sort of give a location that feels fairly representative of where we are in this map, and then I'm going to go into practice, reset, and yeah, okay, this feels like fairly close. Yeah, this feels like fairly representative, that seems good. But if you think about how you actually come to this part in the map itself when you're actually playing a run, you're not just dropping from here. You can't set a starting velocity yet, and maybe we'll get that one day. But you don't get a starting velocity, you start at 0 velocity and you just start falling immediately. So what you'll have to do is you'll have to set up a position that is not necessarily a position you will actually be in when you're playing the map, but one which will set you up for a position which you will have in the map. So in the actual thing, we are dropping down from up here. That might be from a full faceplant on one of the harder routes, or from bouncing down in one of the easier ones. Either way though, we're coming down from position up here, and you may think, okay, we'll put it right by the thing here because that's where we're coming from. But again, if you practice this, you'll realize you're actually far back. Our fog's loaded this time. You're actually really far back, and so in order to hit the spider leg in a way which feels representative, you have to pull back, and you don't want to have to do that every time you practice. You think this practice map is going to be a thing that you reload a bunch of times, and you want to be able to just kind of do the thing, replicate the movements. So what we're going to do instead, we're going to just pull ourselves back a bit, and if you want to represent a bit more speed, like a heavier impact, move it a little higher. How does this look? Yeah, this feels a lot more like how the map actually feels when we play it. Yeah, that feels more representative to me. So we'll go with that. And that gives us a nice place to start practicing this section. We no longer have to play the first 20-25 seconds of the map to practice what is a very tricky section of the map. One thing that you'll start to notice very quickly when you're doing this is, oh, you're practicing, and I look down and here's the little movement widget and it's getting in the way. That's just because we are currently selecting the player. If we come over here and click it again, every time we click on it, see it appears and disappears, just click on it again to get rid of it. And with this UI again, we can press 2 to get rid of that UI. So that gives us a nice starting point for understanding how to set up maps. One thing I'm going to do with this is I'm going to put a bunch of these XYZ horizontal and what is this pitch and heading, pitch and yaw. I'm not sure. I'm not a flight sim guy. I'll set a bunch of these 5-number positions in the description just to give you some starting points for practicing certain points, like the end of the village, this spider one. I'll set one up for the ending in particular. The ending is tricky. I will show you the map I have for the ending, but instinctively, like the ending, the actual hard part of the ending is just the mushroom bounces, right? Just setting up for these mushroom bounces is really what we want, but in reality, we can't just set up a map here and slide down from here. It might feel like you can, but the thing is, you'll set up the exact same slide every time, and you'll end up practicing and optimizing for a very specific slide. And then you'll get into the wild and you'll start doing runs and you'll never get that set up. So what I actually recommend you do instead is not even set up for up here or anything like that, is set up way back to this part here, like a few seconds beforehand. Set up a nice bounce that's going to be fairly representative, so all you have to do is kind of hold forward, and you can put in very small variations by just sort of not quite holding forward the whole time, or holding forward a little bit later, move a little bit left, a little bit right. And you very quickly can start up variations that will give you a bit of randomness in exactly the kind of outcome you get. Before I exit this though, I want to make sure this is a map I can just open, so always hit save scene when you're happy with it. We don't want to worry about uploading, we don't want to spam the workshop with a bunch of practice maps. We just want to make sure we've saved this so that we come back to it and we'll get the correct map. So now if you want, just quickly to show it, when we hit play, rather than starting us up at the top, it starts us down here, and this is exactly what this is representative, right? This is proper practice, and we can play through to the ending. But we might not want to play that whole section just to practice the ending. So let me show you the end practice point I have. which is way further down, but it's nowhere near the actual ending itself. We still have several seconds of play. What this allows us to do is practice a few different speeds, different positions. That was me holding forward quite late, and I missed. Well. But this time I'm going to hold forward the whole way, and yeah, much more deadly. If I hold forward the entire time, this one's set up so that you can survive it, but you know, you can take too much speed into that transition. I'm doing this practice on keyboard and mouse because the editor is in keyboard and mouse and my controller is currently out of commission. But this allows you a lot of leeway to practice different things and properly approach the ending with a lot of different angles and really learn all of the ways it can screw you over and ways that you can mitigate that. I am not a keyboard and mouse player, so this is actually extremely difficult for me. You're getting a real insight into what my practice procedure looks like. It's painful. Okay, so that's all I have to say really about practice maps. There's a lot you can do wrong, but oftentimes the consequence of getting it wrong is just a little bit of frustration down the line. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. Just understand the crux points of your run. There are relatively few points that you cannot survive if you do something slightly wrong, and I recommend practicing those more than anything else. So that would be like the end of the village can throw you a ton of slowdown. The spider section is just very finicky. The pipe section is very, very difficult to do, and you need to be able to handle all different situations, and the ending of course is very, very challenging. So let's say those are the 4 practice points I would say are really useful to have. But you might find that you're really struggling with this particular transition to the mushroom. You might have to set up a little bit further back so you can try out different things there. Or you might be trying your own crazy strat and you just want to see if it works, and so you'll put the player right there and you'll, run around a bunch of different things there. As you see fit. Practice is actually really good fun in this game. It's very mindless sometimes, but you can also approach it very actively. I encourage you to do so if you're finding that the only improvements you're getting are like, a couple of tenths here, a couple of tenths there, and you feel like you're hitting a bit of a brick wall, or you're really struggling for consistency on some tricks. Just build a practice map, put a little bit of time in there. It doesn't have to be a lot, 10, 20 minutes. Can really make a difference to your consistency when you get that highly concentrated practice time. But hey, if you're not having fun with it, that's okay. You don't have to have fun with the same things that I do and that other speedrunners do. If you're not having fun, then that's cool. I want you to have fun with this. And I think that good practice is a great way to minimize the amount of time you spend having bad times. Maximize the fun, minimize the pain. But speedrunning is always a little bit of pain. Otherwise, it would be easy and everyone would have the best possible time. Bloody hell, that was a lot of yapping. I appreciate this is a really long video, but I didn't want to skip anything that might be useful, and trying to script it was bogging me down in unimportant details. So while it's not information dense, it should at least be informative. As I mentioned, I'll have a bunch of supplementary info in the description. Links to any runs I showed, some practice coordinates, or any errata that might come up will either be there or in a pinned comment. Maybe one day I'll make a much tighter scripted version of this, but in my executive function that's probably a ways away. As this was very much an experimental video for me, I'm very happy to take in any feedback or comments you have. Just don't be weird or mean about it, and I'll be sure to take it seriously. Also, let me know if it feels like there's anything I missed. Maybe it'll work its way into that eventual scripted version. And no man, stranger things have happened. Anyway, that's it. Bye bye.